Hey, it's Chris and the Mullenberg team at eXp Realty. So we are a few months past the NAR settlement, right? Now buyers and sellers are starting to officially hear and see what the ripple effects are of the National Association of Realtors settlement, which if you remember back in mid-August, basically changed rules on how agents get paid, how buyers and sellers pay commissions or compensation to their agent. It was a lot of buildup this year in 2024. And now I want to look back and say, okay, now that we're a few months into this, what does the NAR settlement actually mean now that it's being played out in the real world as buyers and sellers are doing transactions with their agents? Here's the recap. So just to reiterate what the NAR settlement did, if you remember, for buyers, it basically said, buyers, if you want to go look at property, you have to have a signed agreement with a broker that states how that broker is representing you and how that broker or agent is getting compensated, right? So it had to be very clear, whereas before you could go look at homes without that agreement. So that was one big change on the buyer's side. The other change for buyers was that if the seller or listing broker of the home that you wanted was not going to compensate your agent, then you, buyer, were potentially on the hook to pay your agent out of pocket at closing. This was a little bit of a change because a lot of times the industry was working in such that the seller or the listing agent was providing cooperative compensation to the buyer's agent. So buyers were buying homes and not having to write an additional check at closing to pay their agent. It was coming out of the seller's side of the statement. So this is a big change. So a lot of buyers have been asking us, wow, I don't know if I want a buyer's agent now, if I'm going to be on the hook to pay that agent. We're barely getting our own down payment and closing costs together. I can't pay another 1 or 2 or 3% to my agent. So that was a big concern for buyers. So how is this actually playing out for buyers in the marketplace? Well, we've represented lots of buyers since the NAR settlement went into place, since the rule changes, and guess what? 96% of our compensation as buyer's agents have been paid by the seller or the listing broker. Okay, so if you are a buyer wondering, oh no, am I going to get stuck having to pay my buyer's agent out of pocket? Well, here's the example. We've done multiple transactions since the rule change. 96% of our compensation is being paid typically by the seller. So rest easy, buyers. The market has continued to flow such that sellers are willing to look at offers that include your buyer agent compensation. Now, sure, you may run into the odd seller here or there that says, hey, I'm not going to pay any buyer agent commission, or I'm not going to pay all of the compensation that your buyer broker is asking for. Okay, in that case, you're going to have a conversation with your buyer's agent as to how that's going to work. And the agreement that you have signed with them is the document that states how they get compensated, how much, and how much you're going to cover in the event that the seller doesn't cover it. So what does this all mean for sellers? One of the big changes of the rules for sellers was no longer could they and their listing agent advertise how much compensation they were offering to a buyer's agent. So it used to be that the MLS listing would show that buyer's agent when they scheduled the showing, hey, we're offering X% or whatever for commission to a buyer's agent. That is gone from every MLS. Okay, so no longer do buyer's agents know if there's compensation being offered by the seller or the listing agent brokerage. So some buyer's agents are calling every home, every listing agent of the homes that their buyers want to see and saying, hey, are you guys offering any compensation? That's still allowed. If the seller gives their agent permission to say, yeah, let buyer's agents know what we're offering, that can still happen. But plenty of buyer's agents, us included, we're just going ahead and showing the homes that our buyers are interested in, and then we are submitting the offer that they want to submit, often including that seller compensates us at closing as the buyer's agent. So this is where I said 96% of our commission and compensation thus far has been covered by sellers as we negotiate that into the offer. Therefore, our buyers are not paying our compensation out of pocket at closing. So you might be asking yourself, Chris, do I even need a buyer's agent? Why don't I just call up the listing agent or try to go straight to the seller, and then we don't have to worry about any of this buyer agent compensation? Well, I caution you only to say that if you want any representation, protection, and a better deal on the purchase of your house, you're going to want an agent in your corner. Okay, when you call the listing agent of a home off Zillow or any other website, you are literally calling the representative of the seller, whose job it is contractually is to get the best deal for their seller. Best price, best terms. Their job is not to get you the best deal. So that is where, and again, we've been tracking our data here at the Mullenberg team, both before the NAR settlement and after, and we found that on average, we are capturing an extra $9,000 in either concessions or closing costs for our buyer clients. So this is on the low end. There's times that we've even this year gotten upwards of $20,000 or $30,000 to our buyer in form of repairs, concessions, interest rate buy downs, etc. So these are things that you may not access without a buyer's agent in your corner going to bat, who knows how to negotiate and get you the best deal. So if $9,000 to $30,000 or more would benefit you in the purchase of your home so that you get your dream home and you get a great deal on it, you're gonna want a buyer's agent in your corner. And hey, if you're a seller and you're wondering, hey, I heard that I no longer have to pay a buyer's agent. Commissions are negotiable. Well, just to be clear, you guys, commissions have always been negotiable. Okay, after this NAR settlement, it just made it a lot more clear who was getting paid and how much and who was going to pay each compensation. So commissions have always been negotiable. A seller could always sit down with their listing agent and say, you know, I'm willing to pay this. Are you willing to provide your services for that? And here we go. We launched the listing. So it's always been negotiable. It's even more clear now. So if you're a seller wondering if you even need to pay a buyer's agent, I'd say discuss with your listing agent. One, because let's say you have 10 buyers interested in your home and 8 out of the 10, are just getting their down payment and closing costs together. They don't have an extra 1, 2, 3+% in their pocket to compensate their agent. Well, if you sellers say, well, we're not paying any buyer's agents anything, buyers, you're going to have to pay your own. You might well knock out those 8 out of the 10 buyers because they just say, well, I'm sorry, I can't buy your house. I do want representation. And now I cannot afford out of my own pocket to pay my agent's compensation. So most sellers in today's market, again, I'd say probably over 90% of sellers are anticipating paying something to buyers, agents, and brokers so that they get the most buyers interested in their home. They have the deepest pool of buyers, because what happens when you have the deepest pool of buyers? You as the seller get your top dollar on the open market. So we're just advising our sellers, let's pick the list price and the contract price that makes sense for you. Let's make sure that listing compensation and potential buyer agent compensation fits in there, and let's work backwards into a number that makes sense for our list price. And just anticipate offers are going to come in from good qualified buyers working with agents, because guess what? 90% of qualified buyers who are pre-approved are working with a buyer's agent. So you do want to open your listing to as many of those buyers as you can. So there's a lot of nuance here. There's frequently asked questions. I hope I covered most of these. Drop us a note here if you've got specific questions about your situation. We're in Northern Colorado. I can speak to the Colorado contracts, but I can also lend an ear if you've got questions anywhere in the world about real estate, and especially as it pertains to the NAR settlement. And happy to be a resource. Thanks for watching.